Hey everyone, welcome to day 3 of the Road to Resurrection. It's Wednesday morning. I'm so excited that you have joined us on this journey through the major events of the life of Jesus during Easter week. I want to begin today with a question. What did the cross mean to Jesus? I mean, we know what it means to us, but what did the cross mean to Jesus? What must the prospect of crucifixion, what must that have felt like emotionally and spiritually and mentally to have lived his entire life knowing that the crucifixion experience was on the horizon? It was the ultimate destination for his life. What must that have been like? And it's almost impossible for us to know. It reminds me of our time after Hurricane Michael, when we were in the midst of all this devastation and we were trying to convey that devastation to family and friends who lived in other parts of the country. And we would try to describe it through a text message or through a phone call. But then sometimes we would send them a picture, or maybe they would come for a visit and they would see it up close and they would say to us, "We had no idea. We just couldn't imagine what you all were going through." And so for us, the passage that we're going to read today is sort of like one of those crystal clear pictures, or it's like driving into town and you see all of this and you come to this new reality and this new understanding. The passage is the Garden of Gethsemane, and we find it in Matthew 26. It doesn't transport us to the cross, but I think it helps us understand at least a little bit, a little clearer of what the cross must have meant to Jesus. Because we know that the first Christians believed that something happened on Good Friday, because of which the world would be a completely different place. That a revolution of the world and a revolution of the human heart had happened on the cross. And it was a very bad thing that happened, but it was a very good thing that came about as a result of it. A very good thing, but it came at a very high price. And Matthew 26 helps us understand just how high that price must have been. The Garden of Gethsemane is where Jesus goes to pray on Thursday night of Easter week after the Passover meal with the disciples in the upper room. He spends a long time teaching the apostles. John 13, 14, and 15 tell us about that large body of teaching. But then they go to a garden called Gethsemane to pray. And Gethsemane means oil press. And I think there's a double entendre there, because we're supposed to feel the emotional weight as it is crushing to Jesus. And he goes there to pray. He goes there to prepare for the crucifixion. He goes there to face the reality. And I think most importantly, he goes there to surrender, to come to a place of surrender and submission, to be able to trust the Father where his will and the will of the Father align. And he can say, "Not my will be done, but your will be done." And so we read in Matthew 26, beginning in verse 36, that he went with the disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And we see an emotional state of Jesus unlike anything that we've seen in him before. And he said, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch." And going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and he prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." And there's a subtle difference between his first prayer and the second and third prayers that we read about next. They sound the same in English, but in the original language, there's an important but subtle difference. Because the first prayer is Jesus praying, "Father, if it is possible." And the implication is that it's possible. He can say no. He can turn and go another direction. He can walk away from this and not surrender. That's what the prayer means. And so I think we see something of the agony that he's experiencing. I mean, Jesus isn't psychotic here. He He doesn't want to experience this. No one in a right and stable mind would want to experience the agony and the torture of crucifixion. But he prays, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass. Now, what is this cup? And this cup is an image found throughout the Old Testament of God's wrath, of God's judgment on all thing that is evil and wrong and sinful in the world. And the idea is that God's judgment fills up as the cup fills up. And every heinous crime and every unrighteous sin, everything that destroys God's world and hurts God's people and hurts God's creation, God has this righteous anger toward it. And God's judgment is sometimes seen as a cup being poured out. And Jesus is saying, I will drink the cup. I will drink it to the dregs where there is nothing less left. I will take it all. I will absorb it. And that's the cup that he's talking about. And I'm amazed that as Matthew tells the story, that he tells it so honestly. He doesn't gloss over and paint this false picture of Jesus. This isn't a stoic Jesus. This is a Jesus who is wrestling, who is feeling the agony and feeling the weight and being crushed by it. But we see that he continues to pray throughout the night. And even though sometimes we get a little distracted in this story with the disciples sleeping, or what does this passage teach us about prayer? And those are good things. But the focus of this story is on what is happening in the heart of Jesus as he is praying to the Father and praying until he comes to a place of submission, which we see in the second and third prayers. He went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. Matthew says he went away a third time and he prayed the same thing. Father, if it's not possible. And there's a subtle change there. And this change means it's not possible. There is no other way. There is no plan B. The cross is the way. The cross is the path. He will be the one who will take on the punishment. He will be the one who will absorb the wrath of the Father. He will take it all for every sin and every evil thing that will ever be done. Jesus comes to that place of surrender and says, since it's not possible, your will be done. And understand that it's not the physical torture that he dreads. As bad as that might be and might have been, it's the spiritual dynamic that he is dreading. It is the bearing the sins of the world. It is absorbing and experiencing the wrath of the Father and separation from the Father. And it tells us something so profound. It helps us understand what the cross means to us in greater depths and what the cross must have meant to Jesus, that he faced his ultimate darkness alone so that you would not have to face your darkness that way. That Jesus' prayer, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass. His prayer was rejected so that our prayers could be accepted. In a moment when he goes to the cross, and instead of feeling this close, intimate, abiding presence of the Father, what does he feel? He feels the absence. My God, why have you forsaken me? See, Jesus made the presence of God and relationship with God available to us when he felt it the least. So if Jesus could trust the Father in his hour of darkness this way, in total surrender, can't we trust him in our hour of darkness as well? Have a great day, have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you tomorrow as we continue on the road to resurrection.